Hi everybody. Hello. Do you want ASMR? My cat. Do you want ASMR? Tingles. Tingles, 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 tingles. Do you want ASMR? Do you want ASMR? Do you want ASMR? Tonight I want to do some whisper story time. Maybe just a little mic scratching. Please excuse my cat. I thought she was coming over here now. No. Okay. I wanted to do a story time for when I had my son. He is now 8 months old. I had my baby right in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. So let's just jump right into the story time here. So my husband and I decided to start trying for a baby pretty soon after our wedding. I wanted a honeymoon baby. He told me no. So we tried for a few months, and fortunately it did not take us long to get pregnant. Please excuse my cat. Sorry. Fortunately it did not take us long to get pregnant, and I got married in May of 2019, and I got pregnant. I found out I was pregnant in October of 2019, so we only spent the summer trying. So October 2019, I found I was pregnant. I announced it to friends and acquaintances, and announced it on Facebook on Christmas Eve. We did a Christmas themed announcement in December. It was the day before Christmas Eve, so December 23rd of 2019. And then, as we all know, in March of 2020, COVID-19 pandemic hit the United States and shut everything down. So I actually consider myself quite lucky. I'm quite lucky because I was able to have my 20-week anatomy scan with my husband and my father present. So my 20-week anatomy scan, and for those of you who don't know, the anatomy scan usually happens between 18 and 24 weeks of pregnancy, and it's the longest, best ultrasound you get to see every detail of your baby. They go through the anatomy from head to toe and make sure everything looks good. The baby is often moving and kicking and wiggly by then. So those ultrasounds are just really exciting and a lot of fun, and I got to invite my dad and my husband, the baby's father, to go with, and they were able to join and see that ultrasound, and that was really exciting and really fun. But the next week, everything was closed down here, and I live in the United States, and everything started to close down the week or two after my ultrasound, and my husband was no longer allowed to come to my appointments, and I had a couple minor complications with my pregnancy, and so I was actually having ultrasounds every other week, and then in my third trimester I had them every week. So I actually got a lot of ultrasounds, and my husband couldn't come to the second half of my pregnancy's ultrasounds, and I know that really hit hard for him. He didn't like that at all. It's his baby too, it's his child, and he really wanted to be there. You'll have to excuse my stomach making noise. I just ate chicken wings, which I actually made myself, and I was really proud. Anyway, so that was kind of the first effect of precautions, as all agencies at the time were, to try to figure out how to best keep their clients and employees safe during the pandemic. And part of their decision making was that any medically vulnerable populations would be required to work completely remotely until further notice, and they classified pregnant workers under this. And so with my job, typically I would be doing home visits and I would be going to see people directly, and required to see people face to face every month. And so my agency said, if you're pregnant, you can't go out into the community or in the field anymore. You have to stay at your home office. And so I had to have other coworkers do my home visits for me. I guess I'm kind of giving away what I did for work, but so I was told to stay home 100% of the time, and I could no longer come to the office or do my home visits. And while we had the technology like WebEx and Zoom and Google Duo and email and text and FaceTime and all that to stay in touch, it really still felt isolating. And by this time I was in my 3rd trimester and I was just in pain all the time. Like I said, there was a couple complications with my pregnancy, and I was, well, I guess 3. I was sick the whole time. Nausea, vomiting, gestational diabetes. I required insulin because I was not able to control the diabetes with my diet, but that's a discussion for another day. So, sorry, I gotta change hands here. I'm trying to keep the camera away from the light. It's not working. Where was I? I just felt really isolated, and I had to deal with diabetes appointments once a week, ultrasounds once a week, and I wasn't allowed to bring supports to any of these. Insulin 3 times a day, and I'm a small person, and pregnancy just was not easy on my body, so I was very much in pain, very uncomfortable. I was struggling with mental health because I'm a social person. I did not like to be isolated. I did not like to work from home. I did not like to have to go talk about my diet every week. And not to mention, I was terrified that I or my husband would end up with COVID-19 around the time of our child's birth, and then we would end up separated from our newborn. So as a result, I took the quarantine very seriously. I didn't even visit my family. I didn't visit friends. I didn't allow friends to come over. Thankfully, my husband was also an essential worker, so he did not lose his job. But he would go to work and he would come home, and I would just be paranoid that he went out into the world and brought those germs and viruses back home. So I spent a lot of time disinfecting, a lot of time alone, a lot of time worrying, a lot of time in pain, a lot of time in discomfort, a lot of time stressed out and anxious. And it almost cost me some friendships. I had friends that were still getting together all the time, having cookouts, going to house parties, having people over, which in hindsight, I get it. Like, the quarantine, the shutdown sucked, and everybody had to deal with it in their own way. And truth be told, had I not been pregnant, I might have been doing the same things, but it just hits differently when you suddenly have a little one to think about, and the idea of going through all of this for the pregnancy and then childbirth and then not even being able to hold my son until he was 2 weeks into this world. I just could not fathom the thought of it. So I made a Facebook post complaining about people still seeing each other, and I called out a couple of my friends on the post, and I shouldn't have done that, and I was being overdramatic, but essentially I posted that they were making me feel unsafe and that I was afraid they were gonna cause me to be separated from my baby, and if everyone would just stay home and do their part, we could beat this thing, blah 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 blah. Here we are a year later. Well, like I said, here we are a year later, and we still haven't beat this thing, but at the time I was taking it super, super seriously, and my friends got pissed at me for airing it out on Facebook, which I get, and I should say I didn't put their names in my post directly, but people knew who I was talking about, and I had several friends Snapchatting me pictures of everybody hanging out, and I'm like, I'm sitting at home miserable, isolating myself to beat this, and y'all are just going on like nothing's changed, you know? It didn't sit right with me, and so I almost lost a couple of friends over it, and I had to cancel my baby shower as well. My baby shower was scheduled in April, so in March, before everything got shut down, I had already paid for nice cute little invitations. I had sent them out, mailed them out to everybody. I had bought, and my best friend had bought decorations for the party. We had already started acquiring items. And then I ended up having to cancel my baby shower, and I didn't get one, and it broke my heart. I chose not to do a gender reveal party. I didn't have interest in that. I just posted on Facebook little boy shoes when we found out we were having a boy, along with this ultrasound photo. So I didn't do a gender reveal party, and I really wanted a baby shower, and when I decided I wanted to be a mom years and years ago, I always pictured a baby shower and how fun it would be to sit there with my cute belly and open things that would be for my little one, and look forward to the day I gave birth and my baby was with me. And I think to some extent most women who are pregnant look forward to that, but I didn't get that, so it was canceled. I had some family members offer to do a virtual party for me, and I wasn't interested in that. And I had a couple of friends, and my sister offered to host a baby shower later, but I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to plan anything. I didn't want to plan anything because we didn't know if the virus was going away, and I didn't want to plan, resend out invitations only to have to cancel again, so I just ended up not having a baby shower. And I told myself that I would do a welcome baby party when the baby was born. Didn't end up doing that either. I was diagnosed with postpartum depression, PPD, on day 1 after childbirth. Day 1. And I was really open and honest about my struggles and what I was thinking and feeling, and I'm proud of myself for getting the help and being vocal with my doctor and my supports and my family about what I was feeling. Baby woke up. I forgot exactly what I was saying, but I got diagnosed with postpartum depression the day after I delivered my son. And it's still kind of hard to talk about, but I did need therapy and medication to manage it, and mine didn't get as severe as like wanting to harm myself or harm my child. It was nothing like that. It was just trauma. My birthing experience was traumatic for me and traumatic for my little boy and my husband, and I was so upset with how everything with my pregnancy went down, with being sick the whole time and the pandemic, and I always thought I would love being so happy and so excited, and it just didn't turn out that way for me. I was sick the whole time, and the pandemic hit, and I was isolated, and my entire world was changing around me, on top of how it already changes when you find out you're having a baby. And well, a lot of my diagnosis and my depression came from what happened the day of delivery as well. I was scheduled to be induced at 39 weeks pregnant. So that night, I was scheduled to go into the hospital at 8:30 p.m. that night to be induced, and 4:30 in the morning the day of. So like 16 hours before I was even scheduled to go to the hospital, my water broke. At 4:30 in the morning, my water broke, and I called my doctor, and they told me to head into the hospital, and woke up my husband, and thankfully we already had our hospital bags packed, and went to the hospital. And I wanted to put off getting an epidural because I know it can slow down labor, and my sister had her first child, was like a 26-hour long labor, and it was just horrible, and I didn't want that, so I chose not to get an epidural right away. I knew I wanted an epidural, I just wanted to wait as long as possible to get it, because I didn't want my labor to slow down, you know. So I labored in the tub, and there was a problem with my son, and I don't really want to get too into it, but essentially his heart was failing. And there was several times when his heart would fail or be really, really low beats per minute, and the nurses would come running into my room and flop me onto my side, and we had to find the position that would bring his heart rate back up. And there was one position that allowed his heart to beat normally, and that was me on my right side, completely still. And I did not have an epidural yet, and I was very much the type where I wanted to breathe through my contractions and move through them and flow with them. And when I had to remain completely still on my side through multiple contractions, it was tough, to say the least. I was literally like what you see in the movies, where the lady in labor is screaming in her hospital room. I literally was like, ah. And I was shaking from adrenaline, and I was also pissed. I was mad, because, again, I was in so much pain, and I just needed to move through it and breathe through it, and they weren't allowing me to. For good reason. They needed to keep my son's heart rate up. What ended up being the issue was an issue with the umbilical cord was getting crunched somehow. It was like twisted. Like when you get a kink in the cord. That's what was happening to my son, and so he would lose the blood flow through the umbilical cord, and then his heart rate would drop. And there was only one position where I could put my body that kept his umbilical cord from getting that kink in it. So that's why I had to stay on my side. A very long, traumatic story short, I labored to 10 centimeters. I got my epidural at 5 centimeters. But my contractions were coming so rapidly and so quick. Even the nurse was like, I have never seen it happen so quick like this. And so it was hell. It was hell. And I labored to 10 centimeters and ended up in an emergency C-section anyways, because they said my son's heart was not strong enough to make it down the birth canal. Well, they said probably they did give me the option to push if I really wanted to, because I was at 10 centimeters, but they said he was not dropped enough for me to push him out safely. They said, well, you can try 1 or 2 pushes and see if he comes down easily, but we advised a C-section, and I asked the doctor and the nurse to leave the room, and I said to my was so afraid of a C-section. I'm terrified of surgery and anything requiring anesthesia. And I already had the epidural. I didn't want any more. But I told my husband, ultimately, I don't want to let the fear of surgery stop me from getting the C-section, because what if I said, no, I don't want the surgery, I'm afraid of it, and I decided to push him out, and we ended up with a stillborn. You know, it's the worst thing that could possibly happen. Nobody ever dreams of that happening to them. I just could not imagine selfishly making the decision to try to push and deliver him vaginally, and him not making it just because I didn't want to have the C-section. So I went ahead and called the doctor back in and told her we had made the decision to move forward with the C-section, and they rushed me over there because I was at 10 centimeters. My body was going to start pushing this kid out one way or another, and his heart wasn't strong enough. So I ended up in a C-section, and then because of the diabetes, he needed glucose right after delivery. So I was not able to hold him. I was not able to breastfeed him. I actually pumped every single day until he was 2 months old. And finally, when he was 2 months old, he learned to latch and nurse, and he's been breastfed ever since. So I give myself kudos for not giving up on the breastfeeding, but we don't need to go into any more detail. That is pretty much my story and what it was like to be pregnant and have a baby in a pandemic. They did let my husband come to the delivery room. He was there with me the whole time. He was there in the operating room when I had my C-section. He was able to hold our son while I was getting stitched up. But we were not allowed to have visitors at the hospital, so that was another way that COVID affected the childbirth experience, and just everything all wrapped up into one. Sorry, my cat's making noise. Everything all wrapped up into one. I was just very depressed, and it was not what I thought becoming a mother would be like at all. And then there's, you know, the whole, oh my god, we're responsible for this little itty-bitty, completely helpless human being, on top of the sleep deprivation, on top of learning how to communicate with your partner in a different way, and putting the baby first and everything. And it just all added up to me being really depressed, and the hormones, and I got the help I needed, and I have been great ever since. But I feel like COVID-19, among all that other stuff, just really altered my experience into parenthood. So I would love to hear if any of you know anyone who went through something similar, or if you yourself have